Welcome to the Scalable Computing Podcast, joining you from Stanford in the heart of Silicon Valley. In this podcast, we discuss everything about cloud computing, machine learning, and large-scale systems. This season, you'll be joined by world-renowned guests from both industry and academia who have engineered and built some of the largest scalable computing systems in the world. Your host is Dr. Lamia Youseff, a scalable computing leader, one of the early engineers at Google Cloud, and former Microsoft and Facebook technology leader. This podcast is sponsored by Jazz Computing, your tech advisor and partner in scalable and ML engineering. Sign up for updates and new episodes at jazzcomputing.com/podcast. And without further ado, let me welcome your host, Dr. Lamia Youseff.
Welcome, everyone, to the Scalable Computing Podcast. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Sudheera Vanguri today to our podcast. Sudheera is the BM lead for Google Cloud Natural Language, AutoML, and DocAI at Google. She led multi-year strategy and roadmap for a portfolio of products of Google Cloud AI, including AutoML Natural Language, AutoML Translation, DocAI, Google Cloud Translation, and Google Cloud Natural Language. Her work is commonly featured in Wired Magazine, Tech Review, and InfoWorld. It's a pleasure having you, Sudheera, with us today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Sudheera, starting from the very beginning and building such large-scale systems like DocAI at Google Cloud, there must be one or two surprising challenges that you didn't expect when you started this journey. Can you tell us more about it?
Well, the Document AI journey at Google Cloud began soon after I joined Google in 2017 as a natural language PM. Long-form text presented a great opportunity for enterprises to essentially convert their unstructured data, primarily documents, into structured data. So about 80% of enterprise data is still unstructured. Think PDFs, emails, comments, customer feedback. And if you look at industrials like manufacturing, you're looking at patents and manufacturing documents, archives of documents sometimes that are 100 years old. So some of these documents present huge operational challenges to enterprises across various industries. So I think that was one of the biggest areas for Google to invest in and provide tools using a combination of our natural language, computer vision, knowledge graph from Google search techniques, and bring essentially the best, the latest and greatest of Google ML to be applied towards these kind of document processing challenges. So I think what was very surprising in this journey was about, I think, two things. One, I'm always amazed at the use cases that our tools are applied towards. Sometimes our customers amaze us with use cases that we haven't thought about. Some of these are examples, like, for instance, I've seen a startup in Brazil use our technology to process menus or restaurant menus, and they came to deploy their technology in a matter of 6 months. And in about a month, instead of a POC, they were like, this is good. This gets us 98% results using our AutoML. Let's deploy it in production in a matter of 3 weeks. So that kind of result is always gratifying to see. Another example is essentially how multifaceted or across various industries you see these use cases be so diverse. In mortgage companies, for instance, we've seen our technology being applied to solve huge document processing challenges, which then led us to create a product called Lending DocAI that shaves off hundreds of dollars in human processing costs. There's actually a human sitting and reading these documents and analyzing these documents. So it's quite gratifying to see the diverse nature of our applications and use cases that sometimes our customers prod us in the right direction, I would say.
Absolutely, and I bet that's very fulfilling to see technology
Yeah.
being used with customers, and
It's
enabling
the best
them.
part of it's the best part of my job. I think it makes our ML PM roles very gratifying to see how meaningful these applications are.
So absolutely. So that brings me to another question with machine learning model. Many of them are available on GitHub. People might argue that many machine learning models are open source and they can download, they can run them, they can train them from scratch.
Mhm.
But there is a fine line between open source platforms and models and cloud products and models being deployed through cloud products. What
Mhm.
are the differences? What can you tell us and tell our users when to use which?
Sure. From our standpoint, essentially, when you're building a cloud SaaS product, the primary thing that you're looking at is how do you build this stuff to scale? How can you and your team, a small set of folks, essentially serve a large number of customers while still kind of not kind of burning the midnight oil, keeping the systems up and running. So I think that's at the very outset, you have engineering headcount, you have product management kind of analyzing and thinking through the use cases, talking to key customers, building a voice of customer analytics pipeline, and then there is that support and investment over a multi-year roadmap, sometimes 5 to 10 years, and you know that that product is built to scale. That's what you get with a cloud-based SaaS product. Well, open source in that on the other hand works differently, right? So you have nobody can really tell you what to do. It is purely driven by the energy and passion of the folks that choose to invest in it. So there is some governance. There are architects who kind of determine which patches to accept. So the folks that show up then get to kind of choose how products are shaped. So there are pros and cons.
So building on this point that you just mentioned for AI open source versus cloud products, I'm curious, when do you decide to build another AI product versus investing in the open source community? And especially that Google is very well known in supporting many open source projects.
So at Google, when we prioritize products, essentially we look at it, the AI team looks at it through a lens of whether we are building productized solutions for the industry, or whether we work with our professional services organizations and we build package solutions using our AI platform. And you do have our industry renowned AI platform, which includes AutoML, Cloud Machine Learning Engine, and a lot of other tools that help data scientists build products to scale. So while we categorize these products, we have a very strong research community that brings out various products and cutting edge papers. So we do put it through the lens of what do our customers want, and if Google in turn chooses to invest in it, and there's Google proprietary data associated with some of these models, and we can build products around that we can scalably support and build a business around. That's when we try to put that into our Google Cloud product portfolio and serve our customers across financial services, healthcare, and multiple industries. And at the same time, you would see a lot of papers being published simultaneously, so that our open source community can then go ahead and build and scale through our research channels. So I think we do keep a balance around kind of nurturing this community of ML scientists and serving our industrial customers.
I love that. That's super awesome. So actually, that brings me to another question. I'm curious, what keeps you up at night? You're managing many products. What concerns you the most about the AI and ML as a field?
I would say if the recent events have taught us anything, it's that transformation is no longer optional, right? It's a requirement for successes right now. And I'm quite frightened by how many potential problems there are in the world. And we want as many people as possible to be well equipped with the technology to go out and deal with them. So as various businesses are seeking kind of ways to help employees and customers, so new technologies like AI can help them unleash that creativity and solve some of these problems. So I do think that the businesses that do choose to adopt AI in 2020, and I think there was a McKinsey study that came out as well, that the companies that will absorb AI in the next 5 years will essentially contribute the most to our GDP by 2030 through their increased cash flows. So I think that essentially the potential is there, the technology is right there, but the pace at which various companies adopt AI varies. So I think that is one of the key opportunities, I would say, but I'm really, really excited by kind of the potential and the pace at which adoption will happen in the next 5 years.
Very nice. So this is the fun question. If you had a magical eye glasses to look into the future, how would you describe the Google AI portfolio of products in 2025?
I would say we are very increasingly very industry focused right now, and essentially building solutions around how, let's say, financial services companies use and apply our AI. So by 2025, I imagine that we have a strong transformational stories across various customers in FinServe, healthcare. I think digital transformation is going to be key for various industries, especially in 2020. So I think that by 2025, I'd see a portfolio of our cloud-based products driving industrial transformation across most of these companies.
Love that. So that brings us to the last 5 minutes of our podcast today, which is the lightning round. Are you ready to play?
Let's go for it.
Awesome. So the first question, what was the most surprising application of Google Cloud that you have seen so far?
One of my favorite applications was the application of ML in Africa to predict poachers' targets, and that was used to deploy forest ranges, essentially to predict where the poachers would station themselves, and that was then used to drive the prediction algorithm. I think that was a really fun use case.
If you can describe Google DocAI in one word, this word would be?
Automation.
Nice. The future of AI and ML platforms.
I think human in the loop, along with ML. I think there is a part of wisdom that's associated with human judgment that needs to go hand in hand with a lot of ML systems that we're deploying.
Super critical. Thank you for highlighting that. Last question. Today, open source ML models and platforms are shooting themselves in the foot because?
I think most are intended for production, but don't end up making to production because AI is a part of a large system. And the key KPIs that businesses should look for before you kind of build that entire system is you need to look at that holistic problem. So I think thinking about the problem statement holistically and then building towards that is key. I think that's where quite a few systems are shooting themselves in the foot.
Sudheera, today's discussion was so useful and insightful. Thank you for taking the time. We covered many topics, starting from automation and human in the loop to OS, AI models, and open source versus providing and building products, industrialized product at Google. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Lamia. Great talking to you.
Sign up for updates and new episodes at jazzcomputing.com/podcast.